The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their sole purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Wake Up Your Soul. Today's guest is Carrie Bates, formerly known as Carrie Steinseifer when she was an Olympian back in 1984, where she won 3 gold medals swimming. And today she's going to talk to us about all the difficulties that have come after the medals. And this is a topic I've actually been wanting to explore for quite a while, Carrie, because I think there are so many athletes that they dedicate their lives, their childhood, their high school years, college years to some sort of athleticism. And then after that ends, because eventually for most it will end, right? We can't be an athlete for 80 years of our life. We just can't. And so there's this identity struggle. So I thought this would be a very valuable episode to bring to people because I think a lot of people struggle with that later. And for those that have not gotten to that point of struggle, I think you can bring some very valuable tips to those that maybe have children that are athletes and training for the Olympics or just athletes in general and making sure that they have some sort of other identity outside of whatever sport it is they're doing. So, welcome, Carrie.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you finally. We've been struggling with tech for those of you that are listening. This is actually our second time trying to film, and then today we were struggling, but you know what? I actually welcome it. I know you and your helpful tech person, you guys were like so apologetic, but really it's a learning opportunity. So I welcome it.
I'm just happy we were able to make it work. So I'm sure it's operator error. I'm not the most techie person, so I'll take blame for this one.
I really don't know, to be honest, but let's dive in. So you were a swimmer. At what point did you start swimming? Were you swimming as a small child, or when did you get into the sport?
Yeah, I started swimming probably around the age of 5, and really the only reason I got into the sport was because my older brother was doing it. So I just kind of wanted to follow him around. So he got into swimming, and so I followed suit, and I just really loved it. I loved the competition of it. I really loved the training piece of it, which seems strange, but I just really enjoyed being in the water. And thankfully, I happened to be pretty good at it. My success came pretty quickly, but I did start swimming at a pretty early age.
At what point did you feel like it was your identity? Do you know, looking back, do you realize like, wow, I kind of shut out the rest of life and the whole world because that's all I wanted to think about?
Sure. I mean, I think that it became my identity at a pretty early age. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we grow up and, what the dinner conversations are. You were talking earlier about parents or that may be listening that have young athletes in their house, whether they're Olympic level or not, it doesn't matter. I think that my value, not just my identity, but how I valued myself also became really wrapped into winning.
Mhm.
I seemed to get more attention when I was winning, and you're celebrated more when you're winning. And so subconsciously, of course, when I was in it, I didn't realize it was going on.
Right.
But I can look back today and say much of my, yes, identity was wrapped up into swimming and sport, but also my self worth and value was also wrapped up in it too.
How can parents have a balance? Parents for their kids or just kids, young athletes? How do you even create that balance? Because I know to be an Olympian, it is really 24/7. I mean, it's all you're really thinking about and doing, and you can't just minimally dabble in the sport and do well, right? It consumes you. So how do you
Yeah.
succeed but still have some sort of balance?
Yeah. I think that the most important thing is that when you have an athlete that's focused on being an that the percentage of athletes that ever become Olympians is really small.
Mhm.
And so, really, what we need to be thinking about as parents is how do we shape these kids of ours into great human beings on top of being reaching their potential as athletes, whatever that level may be.
Mhm.
And I think what's important is that we're engaging with them outside of the discussions of always what happened in your sport life today. Can dinner conversation be more focused around maybe their friendships or academics or music or whatever else that seems to interest your kids rather than how was practice today? What were your time splits? Did people beat you in practice when you were working on sprints? We tend to want to focus on the sport rather than our kids. And I can say this as a parent, rather than our kids as just human beings, because I think that's we can, where it's easy to kind of weave in the discussion of alcoholism and addiction or any kind of mental health issues is that we are people first and
Mhm.
then the athlete part is kind of secondary. And so sometimes I think we lose sight of that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's the biggest problem is having a lack of this self-identity. It just becomes who you are. I am an athlete, but that's not really who you are. Who are you? I am a good person. I am a caring person. I am a helpful person. You are so much more than a sport, right? I
Right.
mean, it's something so outside of you. And I think it's really important for people to understand that. What would you say is a good way for parents to bring in that conversation of other things that their child is good at, just so they can focus on other strengths within their kid? Because I think that's really important is to be able to help your child see their strengths outside of the sport.
For sure. I think it's really like it goes back to being just good human beings, right? It doesn't matter if a kid has other main interests outside of sports. I didn't love academics, but I think that we as kids, we gravitate to where we feel, not just as kids, as adults too. I would
Mhm,
argue that we gravitate to where we feel some level of success.
mhm,
And I didn't feel a lot of success in the classroom, but I definitely felt a lot of success in the swimming pool. But
mhm,
again, those are external things that are giving me joy, right? So
mhm,
what was it about me as a person that made me who I was?
mhm,
I felt like I was a funny kid. I had a good sense of humor. I was a really good friend. I showed up for my friends when they needed me. I was a good daughter to my parents, right? I felt excited around Christmas when my dad would be with us and get us a gift for my mom as a surprise. And I remember feeling so excited to be able to give that present to my mom that she didn't know about, right? So I think it's just dialing back and go to a movie with your kid or take them to a concert or do things that are outside of performative things
mhm.
that we're doing, like our grades or how well we exceed in the pool or on the field, but just be a parent to your child that is really a great human being, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think what you're saying is really helping them to see that they can get enjoyment and fulfillment in other ways. So, I mean, it can be, I'm sure, simple things like riding a bike or, going for walks or playing games in the backyard and just doing things so that they have some sort of Oh, what's the I don't know, what am I thinking of? Just kind of getting that dopamine hit too in another way, right? Like you get that excitement when you succeed in your sport, but help them to get that excitement in other ways, some sort of success, right? Even if it's you bake something and it turns out well, like that's an excitement to a child.
First,
You know,
I think to your point, you mentioned going for walks or, I remember my dad would take walks with me as a kid. And I could tell, when you're an athlete, you don't always love being an athlete. And you don't love getting up at 5 in the morning and getting in the pool every day, every single day. You don't love 3 hour, 4 hour practices on Saturdays, every single Saturday, right? Just like anything else in life, you're going to hit ebbs and flows and you're going to love what you're doing some days and you're not going to love it other days because you're going to be tired and sore and all these other things. Check in with your kids. Like, how are you doing? Are you burnt out? Are you doing too much? Do we need to step back for a couple days and take a breather? There's
mhm,
so much focus today for kids and D1 and scholarships and all this other discussion that I think that we've just pulled so far away from just checking in with our kids to see, like, are you happy? Because
mhm.
you have value outside of this sport. If you don't want to be doing the sport anymore, that's okay too, right? I think that as parents, we have to be super careful about how much we want our kids to do the sport versus how much they also want to be involved in the sport.
I'm curious from your standpoint, being in the sport like you were and to such a high level, what did you see between parents and children? Did you feel like it was often the parents wanted their child to succeed at the sport more than the child even cared about doing the sport?
I think that we all see that a lot, right?
Okay.
We all see our parents or parents on the sidelines that maybe live a little too vicariously through their, you know? Um, I had parents that were super supportive in a really kind of quiet way. They did check in with me a lot on if I was happy, right? Are you happy doing this? And swimming for me, I grew up in an alcoholic home. And so swimming for me was a really great escape
Mhm,
mechanism. And it was a place where I could go work out all of my fears and my frustrations and my sadness and probably even my anger because nobody could really see me cry underwater, right? Swimming was not just where I found success, but it's also where I found a sense of freedom and a sense of maybe some hope
mhm,
and a place where I could just authentically kind of be myself. So the good news is I was good at it.
mhm,
But it gave me so much more than just winning medals or
mhm.
races, because at the end of the day, I lost more races than I won.
Mm.
I just happened to win on the days that were
Mattered?
probably less important.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big thing to talk about too, though, that you lost so much more than you won because people look at the Olympians like they are the best every single day in their sport. And that's not the case. And sometimes I don't even know if we want to say it's luck, but it just, the other opponents might be injured that day and they're not swimming as well or they're not running as fast or whatever. So the reality is every single one of you that is competing, I feel like you're all just as successful, right? You have all trained just as hard and you all deserve the applause just as much, right? Like you all deserve the medal, really.
For sure. And you know what? When you win an Olympic gold medal, you are the best in the world, but it's on that day in that moment.
Mhm. Yeah, you were the best like 5 minutes ago. You did awesome, but do it
Right.
again right now, maybe, maybe not.
Right. Right. So I'll never take away the impact of that, but I will also put it in perspective to say, you know, that doesn't mean we're the best in the world. And it also doesn't mean that we're immune to life's challenges, right?
Mm,
Like those gold medals did not prevent me from having stumbling blocks in my life and really
right.
struggling at times in my life. And it doesn't hold me, like protect me from every other normal problem that exists in most households in the world.
Mm,
It just actually all the things that happened to me at the Olympics and surrounding the Olympics and the media and all the accolades and applause and all these things that come from it, and what I learned on how to be the best in the world at something were some of the very things that nearly killed me when I struggled with alcoholism many years later.
What can you share what those things are?
Sure. I mean, I thought if I could be the best in the world at something, why couldn't I figure out this little problem I seemed to have with alcohol? Like, why couldn't I stop drinking? I just needed to figure it out, right? Like, I needed time to think and figure out if I can be the best in the world, why can't I stop drinking? And
Mm,
they don't have anything to do with each other. There is no connection there.
yeah.
I was in an individual sport, right? And so I thought if I could just work harder or put my head in a space where I could figure this out, then I could get well.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't know how to ask for help. I was very coachable, but I didn't know how to ask for help. So that independent, don't ask for help. These are all the things that when we start struggling with substance use are the things that nearly kill us because we're isolated enough as it is. And then when we don't know how to ask for help and all the other things, those are the things that keep us away from the ability to get well.
This is so interesting. So you're saying how coachable you were, and that makes me wonder, through the sport, do you feel like a lot of it was just being passive and being allowed to just be coached and not really asking, like, was it not really left up to you to ask, "Oh, how can I improve my time?" Or, "I think my body wasn't working right in this way. How can I get better?" Was that really not even something you ever had to think about or do, like, reach out and try to figure it out, where instead it was like, "I just have to listen, 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 and do, do, do?"
I did a lot of listening and doing. I was very coachable, but when you are coachable, it means that there's this really incredible level of trust in your coach. And so growing up, I really only ever had one coach until I went away to college and swam, but I trusted him implicitly. He was really like a second parent to me
Mhm.
in many ways. I was young. I was 16 at the Olympics. So I
Mhm.
was still really young and impressionable and I didn't know much about the world. I was starting to see the world from a view that very few people ever get, but it didn't mean I understood the world or I
Mhm.
understood what I was seeing. I was just super privileged to be there, right? And so the trust I had in my coach definitely put me in a place where he told me and I listened. And don't get me wrong, I had to do the work and I had to show up every day and suit up and show up, so to speak. I had to make sure I was fueling my body correctly, eating, and at the same time, mind you, I'm in the pool 5 hours a day, but I'm also in school full time. I'm trying to make it academically and all these other things. So, yes, there was a lot of listening and doing and not a lot of needing to self advocate.
Mhm.
I didn't learn to do a lot of self advocating as a kid because I was used to being told what to do, but I trusted him that and it proved to be true, right? Like I trusted him to take me where I wanted to go from an athletic standpoint and he took me exactly where I wanted to go. So that kind of trust is invaluable, but it also later in my life made me realize that I didn't learn to self advocate very well as a kid.
Well, yeah, and it's like, how do I function or how do I steer this ship? Like, I'm used to just trusting somebody else to lead the way. I tell them where I wanna go, and I'm yes, "Yes, sir,
Right.
I'm gonna do as you say, and we will get there." So, I
Right.
can understand that, but, I mean, as a child, they're not necessarily, I mean, somewhat children have to learn that skill, but it is something that does come a little bit later, but I think you had it on such an amplified
Yeah.
platform, like, it's probably different than a normal childhood where it was just, like, trusting someone tenfold, right?
Yeah. For sure. And then after the Olympics, that's when my mistrust of people really started, was because I didn't really know who my real friends were
Mhm.
and who wanted to be with me because I was the Olympic gold medalist. And So there was this whole transition after the Olympics of trying to like figure out why it was such a big deal to everybody. Like I didn't really understand the magnitude of what I had accomplished.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't understand what it meant to other people.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, and I don't know that I can even explain that because I was actually talking to somebody recently about just celebrities in general, and I said, "I don't understand the fame thing," where I get where they get frustrated with people just walking up to them and pretending that they know you and all that, I can understand that, but just the obsession with somebody that you've never met, you don't actually know this person, and to me, their job is acting. They're on TV or they're a model, whatever, but it's like they're just another human being. And their job happens to be something that you get to watch.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it makes them like on some sort of pedestal. It's very fascinating to me,
It
actually.
it's super fascinating, and to your point, when we idolize celebrities or we put them on those pedestals, and then they kind of have this proverbial fall from grace, which can be through substance abuse or ending up in jail or these poor child stars that, have to learn to navigate wealth and all these things when they're 10, 12, 15 years old, and maybe they don't have the right people around them. But then we wanna be the first to kind of criticize
Mhm.
those people that we kind of idolized, right? Like, I think back to Simone Biles in the Olympics where she had to withdraw from competition, and I remember waking up that morning and thinking, "The whole world is holding their breath right now," right? Because she had withdrawn from competition. And it was like, please let it be like you broke your wrist but God, don't let us have to talk about mental health, right?
Mhm.
And then when she said it was due to her mental health, it was like, I don't know if you read all the criticism of her and how she was such an embarrassment and she let the team down and her teammates down and all these other things. And I would argue that her greatest gift to the world, her greatest gift to the millions of little kids that want to be Simone Biles was saying that it's okay to not be okay.
Mhm.
And it's okay to take care of yourself, right?
Mhm.
And ask for the help that you need even on the largest platform in the world.
Mhm.
And the criticism that she took for that was crazy.
I mean, it's anything though. Anything we do that is not in alignment with somebody else's values, I mean, people will jump all over you for
Right.
it.
Right.
It it's wild. It's wild, and especially online. I mean, people are just real crazy behind that keyboard.
Oh, and that's a whole level of stuff that I never had to deal with, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one of the people in the memes that we all laugh at that say, thank God all my most embarrassing moments and all these things happened before there were cell phones and any recorded evidence of it all. But I didn't have to deal with the online piece of it like the kids do now, and it's ruthless for sure.
Well, and that makes it extra hard too for people that are living in the spotlight because every moment is recorded as soon as they step out of their home, and that's gotta be exhausting too in itself. But I wanted
So
to ask you, did you feel like once those medals stopped, you lost your purpose, didn't know who you were, what is my identity now?
very much so. So
Yeah.
4 years later in 1988, I failed to make the United States Olympic team that year, and there was no reason for it. I was still ranked number 1 in the world, but I showed up at Olympic trials not mentally prepared. I was physically prepared, but I was not mentally prepared, and I fell apart.
Mm.
And I stood in the stands that night when they assembled the Olympic team on the side of the pool, and it was all my friends, and really, those are my family, and I was in the stands, and I realized in that moment that I had no plan B for my life whatsoever, and I was in college. I had no idea who I was away from the pool. I had no idea who I was away from the people that knew me as the athlete, and I didn't know if I was even accepted or who I was away from the comfort zone of that world.
Mhm.
And that's actually the first time I remember drinking for the sole purpose of not feeling. Was in that moment was when I
Yeah.
drank, I remember clearly remember drinking to not feel.
Well, and I can imagine the isolation that you must have felt with publicly, everybody sees you one way, right? I mean, you're still seen as this great athlete, but inside the struggle, nobody knows it and nobody understands it. And what do you even do with that? You can't just walk out and start bawling in front of I mean, you could, but I can imagine what that feels like. That's got to be one of the hardest things, right? When you feel one way inside, knowing that the public is viewing you in a totally different way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember in '88, it was still newspapers, right? Newspaper articles. And I remember waking up the next morning and the headlines of the newspaper said, Steinseifer can't keep up with her past.
Yeah.
I remember those headlines nearly 40 years later. And this is the testament to what we were just talking about social media and what happens behind the keyboards is words have such impact on people, right? And it's something that we carry with us for years and years and years. And it's really interesting the way you described it because it is how I felt for decades after the Olympics was that I had to look as if and act as if so that I was the person that I thought you all thought I was by being an Olympic champion. And inside, I was silently dying.
Yeah.
And you said it so beautifully because it accurately describes that need to project yourself and show up in a way with the clothes and your hair, and looking as if, but then inside being because I was so afraid that people would find out the truth about me, that I'm not anything like you think I am, and that I don't live up to your expectations. But I sure learned real quick how to show up every day, whether it was on the sidelines of my kids' soccer games or if it was to a business meeting or anything else. I learned at a very young age how to show up and look as if, and nobody knew the darkness that I lived inside.
Mhm. I think that is the hardest thing that people in the spotlight go through is that what they're living inside is never what people see on the outside.
Yeah, it's not. But today, and for the last 14 years, I have been able to live truly, authentically inside. For the first time in my life, the inside matches the outside,
Mhm.
right? I don't have to go. I mean, I still have clothes and I still have, all the things, but I don't have to present myself in a way outside that no longer matches my inside.
And you don't
Right.
feel a need for, like, external validation.
I don't because the change that I had to go through when I got sober, when I fought and fought to get sober, it took me
Well,
4
Carrie, let's go back and talk about that. So, 88 is when you started drinking, right?
88 is when I first remember drinking for the reason of not feeling. I would not say that that's necessarily when my alcoholism was
Mm,
in full effect.
okay, but you recognize that that day you were taking a sip to numb the pain.
Yes, that's something in me, like, I actually think I was probably born an alcoholic because I am genetically predisposed to this disease.
Mhm.
Um, so I kinda liken it to where, like, the pilot light on your stove is lit all the time. Like, I think that that was always lit, and then after '88, the flame started to be turned up.
Mhm. Yeah, and with your focus being somewhere else now, it's like, "Okay, well, I'm not focused on the Olympics anymore, and what am I doing here?" And, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
alcohol does take you to another place. It does.
Yeah, and not to a very happy place, I will say. As a female, I was a little later bloomer, so my alcoholism really didn't come into full effect until probably my mid-30s to 40, which is pretty typical for females, and and alcoholism, but it also was very fast. So I went from, moderate drinking to heavy drinking to alcoholic drinking to full-blown alcoholism in a very short amount of time. It wasn't like it was drawn out over 20 years of this kind of slow progression.
Mhm.
My progression was very fast.
Okay. So when did you have kids and like what was life like after the Olympics? I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of a gap. So what was life like after the Olympics to having children? Because you said you were showing up to soccer games.
Yeah,
So you were sober then, right? Ish.
I mean, yeah, ish.
Okay.
Um, so after fast forward after college, got my first job in the sports industry and that's where I spent the majority of my career. I worked in the sports industry in LA, and then I was with Reebok, and then I spent the lion's share of my sports career working for Nike and Converse.
Mm.
So I was traveling the world, giving away free product. I was doing sports marketing, and then I moved into sales. I had an absolutely amazing career. I got married and I had my first kid at 30. So drinking was a normal part of our life. We hung out with friends. We had our kids together. I didn't drink through pregnancies. I was not alcoholically drinking when I was pregnant. So I was blessed that I did make it through my pregnancies before my disease kind of really started to affect my life. But the first time I went to treatment was when my kids were probably 7 and 11.
Huh.
So they were young when I went into treatment for the first time, and I really drug them through a lot. I put my kids through a lot. I hurt them, I scared them, I devastated my kids. They're adults today, and I'm so thankful that I have an amazing relationship with my daughters that, we often talk about it, the girls and I, that our relationship may not be as strong as it is today if we all hadn't been through what we did. It doesn't make it easy. I think I look back and I will always have regrets, right? I will always carry the weight of the damage that I did to my kids. But they're stronger young women, and they're empathetic, and they are warm, and they understand that this disease doesn't discriminate. And I've been able to help a lot of their friends over the last 14 years seek help and become a resource for them and their friends in their life. And so, as much as it hurt them in their lives, it also helped shape them into more empathetic young women.
I can understand that, and, like, I can feel the heartache for you because that is hard as a mom to know that you've let your kid down, right? But I also have to just say, like, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable because I feel like everybody wants to, I don't know, camouflage their difficult days and just, like, sweep everything under the rug or pretend it never happened and, "Oh, I just had such a good grip on it and I figured it out and everything was great." But I I can understand how that would be so hard for your children and hard for you. But I also can see where your time with your girls now wouldn't be what it is without it having been that way then. So,
It
it
really, it really is. If we can get into and find sustainable recovery, it really does become a beautiful family story, right? Because it's not just my recovery, it's been theirs too. And they've had to do some work in their own lives to navigate through the pain that I put them through as kids. And of course, my heart will always be heavy for those days. I will always feel sad thinking about, like, my youngest one
sorry.
and how she would be so sad when I would leave for treatment just because she was afraid.
Yeah.
Our kids were afraid that we're gonna die,
Yeah.
and the truth is that many of us do. I am one of the lucky ones that's been able to do the work and now choose to have a beautiful career in this field to help other people every single day. because truly the Olympics, in my mind, happened to me to serve my life today. It didn't really have anything to do with the medals and the front pages of magazines and newspapers. It had to do with creating a platform for me today to say and to share my story publicly and to say that if I can find recovery, so can you.
Mhm.
If I can get sober, so can you. If I can build that bridge back with my children and have the relationship that I do with them today, so can you, you know?
Mhm.
And so this is the greatest gift of my life is my
Mhm.
sobriety. And I've been on a lot of teams in my life and I've seen the world from a view that very few people ever get to see. But I've also lived and seen hell on earth.
Yeah.
And there's no team I am more proud to be a part of than a team of people that have found recovery.
Mhm.
And honestly, aside from the birth of my children and my daughters, the single thing I am most proud of is being a woman in recovery.
Mhm.
It means far more to me than the gold medals that sit in my safety deposit box.
Well, oh gosh, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for I mean, like, I get it. So, I mean, I didn't suffer with alcoholism, but I suffered with very severe depression as a teenager and then again later in my 20s. And so I know it's not easy when you feel one way inside, but nobody else knows it. Like, that makes it even worse. I feel like it makes it even harder when you feel like you're living 2 lives, and it's incredibly hard, and I can only imagine as a mom that scary feeling of letting your kid down, but also maybe not making it through and the guilt that you can have, I can understand. But then I'm always just such a person that really believes everything happens for a reason and we may not know. But I can't help but think, well, for whatever reason, you were meant to walk your journey this way, but so were your girls. I'm sure that strength has served them in other areas of their life, and we'll just never know, right? But
Well, I hope so. But what I will say is that addiction is stronger than love. There's nobody that can tell me that I didn't love my kids as much as every other mom loves her kids when I was in that darkness and when I was struggling. And yes, it does appear that maybe we choose drugs and alcohol over our family, but I also will tell you that at some point in this sickness, we lose that ability to choose. And yeah, addiction is stronger than love. But when we find the other side of it, when we get on the other side and we do the work to get on the other side of this thing, man, I have learned to love with a capacity that I didn't even know I had, right? And I do believe, to your point, and congratulations to you for fighting through your darkness. But I think that our greatest opportunities for growth, I call it those are our OFG moments, our opportunities for greatness happen in the darkest moments in our life. Like, I think we can all admit that when things are perfect and everything's going smoothly and everything's going great, we're really not growing.
mm-mm,
But man, in the darkness and in those hard moments that we go through in life, and especially mental health,
mhm,
because it's such a silent offender, it's such a silent offender that man, can times get dark.
mhm,
But boy, oh boy, when we get to a place where we can do the work, whatever that looks like, whether it's treatment or therapy or meditation or yoga, whatever it is that we find in our lives that contribute to our overall mental well being,
mhm,
gosh, do we get to experience joy like we never experienced, right?
mhm. Yeah, it's wild sometimes too when I look back on it, like, it's such a distant memory, and I don't feel an inkling of the depression anymore, and so it really can be achieved. You really can overcome these things, but it takes time and it takes work, and it takes hard work for sure. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you feel like were most beneficial in overcoming the alcoholism?
Yeah, I needed everything. I I needed treatment. I needed outpatient treatment. I needed a good therapist. I needed to be involved in women's groups with other women, other moms that were in the same stage of life. So I didn't feel so alone. I needed connection. That is what I needed, because isolation is where we end up when we have any kind of mental health issues, whether it's addiction, whether it's depression, whether it's any number of mental health or behavioral health concerns. I needed connection, and I needed to be connected to people that felt the way I felt, that understood that I needed all of it. And at the beginning, especially, right? And now there's many things that contribute to my sobriety and my overall physical and mental health, right? It's running, it's spending time with a family, it's doing Ironmans, there's so many things that have come into my life in the last nearly 14 years of my recovery that contribute every day to staying on this kind of sunny side of the street, if you will.
Yeah.
But I have to do the work every day. I do. I have to remain conscious of the fact that my alcoholism is still a part of who I am. Even though I'm not actively engaged in drinking, my alcoholism is still there. It's still a part of who I am every day. But I've kind of made friends with the enemy, if you will, right? I live with it and I accept it's part of who I am. And honestly, like, my recovery is like my superpower.
Mhm.
And if I wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't have it.
Right.
So I'm grateful for all of it today. I really am.
Yeah. No, I completely relate to that. I'm grateful for everything I went through, and I'm grateful I got through it. It was not pretty getting through it, but I'm grateful to have gotten through it. Can you share, do you want to share like your most difficult day, like the absolute darkest day through the alcoholism?
Sure.
I ask because I think sometimes people have an issue, which I think they're still in the middle of things. But I think sometimes people feel like, well, it's probably not, her case was probably not as bad as mine. And so sometimes I think when we are really vulnerable and can share those really, really hard moments, people listen and they're like, oh, okay, she gets it. She was in this with me. And then it's just more relatable.
Yeah. I spent a lot of years before I got sober doing exactly what you just said. Comparing myself to others, listening to stories from other women saying, I'm not that bad. I've never done that. Oh, I would never do that. Those types of things. And the reality is the longer that I kept drinking, the more I checked those boxes of the things that I hadn't done, swore I would never do, and felt like I didn't have in common with anybody, right? Whether it was drinking in the morning, drinking before 5, then it was before noon, and then before you knew it, I couldn't get up without drinking because it was the only thing that kept me from getting physically ill in withdrawal.
Oh, wow.
Right? So the progression is dramatic. But the good news is that you don't have to get as bad as I got. Like,
Mhm.
I believe that we can choose our own bottom. What is low enough for us,
Mhm.
right? Like, for some people, it might look like blacking out one night at a party, embarrassing themselves and saying, whoop, that's enough for me. Well, that wasn't enough for me. And I had to continue to dig the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And the reality is that as long as we still have the shovel in our hands, the hole will continue to get deeper.
Mhm.
So I will tell you my worst moment, but it's not a drunk moment. It is a moment that happened in my life because of my drinking that I will never forget in my life. And the last time I went to treatment in February of 2012, February 1st is my sobriety date. So this year I will have 14 years sobriety. And on February, I entered my last treatment, what I hope to be my last treatment center in 2012. I stayed in that treatment center 90 days, and it was the greatest gift that I ever gave myself and that my father ever gave me because he had to pay for it as a, mid 40-year-old woman. And when I got out of treatment at about 120 days sober, I had to walk into a courtroom and I lost legal rights to my daughters. And the reason that I lost my legal rights to my daughters was because my ex-husband felt that my kids were unsafe in my custody. And he felt that it was protecting the kids to remove my ability to have any legal rights to my kids. And it was a 2-year probationary period where I basically lived in a fishbowl. I could be called any day to go do a UA in a lab. I had to have a breathalyzer installed in my car. I had not had a DUI, but this was part of what my life looked like for 2 years. And the judge said to me that day, all you have to do is stay sober for 2 years and you'll get your legal rights back to your kids. Well, you have to remember for someone like me, when 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months were impossible to together sober, 2 years felt
Mhm.
impossible. But the girls and I together scratched and clawed our way through those 2 years,
Mhm.
and we found our way into a beautiful, beautiful life. But when I left that courtroom that day, I wondered, like, what is the point of all of this? What is the point of staying sober
Mhm.
if I can't have them? But that was the point. It was so I could have them and these last 14 years with them and to be the mom that I was always intended to be.
Mhm.
And so that darkest moment was that day in that courtroom.
What a gift though for them to ask for 2 years, right? Because you might have been able to do 2 weeks if that or 2 months if that was what was asked, but to put that pressure on you, I think was such a gift.
Yeah. So, but it still doesn't erase the darkness and the
No.
humiliation that takes place in that moment for any mom, right? But, you know, I celebrate February 1st more than that means more to me than my birthday. Yes. Because it really was when I found my new life and I found my purpose and my passion. And that has really taken me to where I am today to help other people every single day. When your purpose and passion in life intersect, if you're lucky enough that they do, what a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
What a
So what would you share for people to help them intersect their purpose and their passion?
Yeah, I think that part of that is getting to know who we really are.
And how do people do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's through any self-exploration process
Mm.
that we go through, right? It's where do we find meaning? Where do we find purpose? Where do we find connection?
Mhm.
Uh, who do we choose to align ourselves with? And, keeping our circles small and special, right? I spent years wanting as many friends as possible for as many different reasons as possible. And now I find such peace and such value in having a small circle. And because I don't need the noise anymore to fill holes that existed inside of me.
Mhm.
I've been able to find my own way to fill those holes without needing external things or people to do it.
Yeah.
So it can come from many different aspects, but most of all, it comes from being honest with ourselves.
Mhm.
We're struggling with substances, if we're struggling with depression, if we're in unhappy marriages, if we've got challenges with our kids, life is full of obstacles and
Mhm.
full of challenges, right? But the biggest one is getting honest with ourselves
Mhm.
about who and what we are.
Absolutely. And it's easier said than done, I know, but it's so funny because something that was just coming to me earlier today that I was thinking about was how and it actually had nothing to do with the fact that we were filming. It was I had seen somebody else did a post on social media about just feeling like super lost in life. And it's funny because there's also people that post about how something's kind of wrong with you. If you're lost, like, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, like, basically get it together, and I'm like, "You are, like, in the best season of your life." Like,
Ah,
when you are
I
lost, this is, like, discovery time. Like you are about to move over and figure out exactly
Yep.
where you need to go and who you are. And
You about to
being,
have your OFGs.
yeah,
And I would argue that the people that think people that are in the worst place in their life because they're struggling are every single person is battling something.
hmm
Every single person is battling something. And usually the ones that are pointing a finger and talking about other people are some of the ones that struggle the worst.
yes, yes, yeah, that is very true. Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for being here. Carrie, is there anything else you want to share? Do you want to share where people can connect with you if you welcome that?
Yep, you can find me on social media, of course, Instagram, Facebook,
Okay.
LinkedIn. And I just would leave everybody with, if you're struggling, please pick up that 10,000-pound phone and ask for help, whether
Mhm.
it's with substances, mental health. It doesn't matter what it's for, but there's such a beautiful life waiting for us once we find our way.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much.
thanks for having me.